Welcome to True Voice Shorts, a curated audio series that brings fiction, memoir, and reimagined classics to life, honoring language, voice, and the legacy of storytelling. Today's story, The Happy Prince, is part of the Modern Fables for Grown-Ups series, where timeless lessons are retold with wit and edge. Stories that hold a mirror to our lives while entertaining with a clever twist. The Happy Prince is based on the beloved tale by Oscar Wilde. It's the story of a golden statue and a little sparrow, a prince who once knew only pleasure, and a bird who learns the language of sacrifice. Together, they discover what true compassion means and how love can outshine even the richest gold. This is a story of kindness, courage, and the quiet grace that lives in giving. Oscar Wilde, 1854 to 1900, was an Irish writer whose wit, imagination, and eye for beauty made him one of the most distinctive voices of his time. Best known for plays like The Importance of Being Earnest and his novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Wilde also wrote stories filled with heart and compassion. Though Wilde's life swung between dazzling success and painful scandal, his work endures because it speaks to something timeless: the need to be seen, to do good, and to find beauty in compassion. Wilde's England was an age of progress gilded with moral contradiction. Factories roared while parlors glittered. Innovation and inequality rose together. He saw how beauty could distract from suffering, how society mistook ornament for virtue. The Happy Prince was his reply, a fable where beauty must learn to serve compassion. Wilde wrote The Happy Prince in 1888 at a moment when he was questioning the worth of beauty without mercy. Tale was printed for children, but it stares straight at adults, at polite blindness, useful cynicism, and the gap between admiration and care. A jeweled statue, once a prince who never saw beyond the palace walls, suddenly sees everything from a pedestal above the town. A drifting swallow, pleasure-seeking, easily charmed, stops long enough to notice hunger, cold, and need. Over a century later, the Happy Prince still asks us to look beyond appearance, to measure the worth not by wealth or perfection, but by love. Every age discovers the Happy Prince and claims it for their own, though today compassion wears new disguises: activism, awareness, performance. But the question remains the same: do we see, or do we merely look? The Prince and the Swallow offer an answer that defies trends. True empathy costs something. To give beauty meaning, one must let it break. This story reminds us that mercy is not weakness. It is the courage to witness pain and stay present. For contemporary audiences, the parable still whispers through its poetry. Goodness, once awakened, does not go back to sleep. The Happy Prince, a contemporary retelling. The Pedestal. High above the renovations and restaurant patios of a town that prides itself on livability, a statue watches. Gold leaf burnished bright as noon, eyes with clear blue of distant water, a red stone glowing at his sword. Tourists still pose beneath him. Parents point him out to children in winter when the square is strung with lights. The brochure calls him iconic. But the statue is not only bronze and gilding. Inside the metal, memory wakes. He remembers a garden where the rules were simple. Nothing ugly was allowed to grow. Nothing sad was permitted to enter. He remembers laughter, afternoon music, the kind of education that can be mistaken for goodness. He remembers being called happy because he never saw anything that might argue the point. But from the high column on which he stands, he sees further than any palace ever let him look. He sees a woman stooped over a sewing machine, lamplight bruising her eyes. He sees a boy coughing into a thin blanket as the radiator cranks itself to sleep. He sees men carrying boxes twice their weight and being thanked with small loaves of bread wrapped in rags. He sees a schoolmistress counting slates so she can afford crayons. He sees, and seeing hurts. Something cracks faintly within him. Not metal, something older. The traveler at his feet. October arrives sharp and blue. A swallow flits through the evening late by the measure of his flock, later still by the advice of winds that know better. He was delayed by romance with a reed who danced beautifully and rooted even better. He loved the way she bent and shimmered in the current. He did not love the part where she never moved. Scanning for a perch, the swallow spots the column, circles once, and drops to the narrow ledge between the prince's feet. It is out of the wind there, a sheltered wedge where the town heat rises like a sigh. He shakes out his feathers and tucks his head, and is nearly asleep when a drop lands on him. Cold, unmistakable, rain. The sky is a deep bowl of cloudless glass. He looks up, another drop, and another, bright on his wings like beads of mercury. He flew up to see, and found the eyes of the happy prince filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks. His face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with pity. "Who cries from stone?" the swallow asks, more curious than afraid. "Who are you?" "I am the happy prince." "If you are happy, why do you weep?" asked the swallow. "When I was alive and had a human heart," answered the statue, "I did not cry in life. I did not know how. I lived in the palace where sorrow is not allowed to enter. In the daytime, I played with my companions in the garden, and in the evening, I led the dance in the great hall. The garden was surrounded by a very tall wall, and I never cared to ask what lay beyond it. Everything I saw, everything I had, was so beautiful. My courtiers called me the happy prince, and happy indeed I was, if pleasure is happiness. So I lived, and so I died. And now that I am dead, they have set me up here to overlook the city. I see too much now, and there is nowhere to put it but out." "What do you see?" "Far away," continued the statue in a low musical voice. "Over there in a little street there is a poorhouse. One of the windows is open, and through it I can see a woman seated at a table. Her face is thin and worn, and she has coarse red hands, all pricked by the needle. She is a seamstress and is embroidering passion flowers on a satin gown for a lady-in-waiting to wear at the next court ball. In the bed in the corner of the room, her little boy is lying ill. He has a fever and is asking for oranges, but his mother has nothing to give him but river water, so he is crying. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, bring her the ruby from my sword hilt. I would go to her myself, but my feet are fastened to this pedestal and I cannot move. Take my ruby, little swallow. It is the red stone on my sword. Carry it to them. The swallow ruffles in protest. Egypt waits, warmth, river light, birds who gossip all night among the reeds. Do as I command you. The boy's cough, the mother's tired hands, the way the tear had surprised him. These make a nest he cannot shake free. One night, he says, I will stay and be your messenger for one night. He pries the ruby loose, his beak shocked by its cold, and streaks low over roofs that hold heat like old bread. He finds the window, a woman with a seam ripper, a thimble scar on her finger, a child turning his face away from water. The swallow sets the stone by the thimble, fans the boy's forehead with his wings until the flush leaves it, and watches both mother and child slip into a real sleep. On his way back, he passes a balcony where a couple debates the cut of a dress for the ball. He wonders briefly what good gowns are if no one can afford oranges. Back between the prince's feet, the air feels less cold. That was warm work, the swallow says. That is what giving does, the statue answers. The eyes. The next day, the swallow skims the river for a bath, startling a professor who cannot reconcile feathers with frost. He means to leave as planned, but first he would visit all the public monuments. He sat for a long time on top of the church steeple, and wherever he went, the sparrows chirped and sang with him. He enjoyed the day very much, and when the square was blue with evening, he returned to the prince and asked, "Have you any errands to the south? I'm to start out for Egypt." "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," said the prince, "will you not stay with me one night longer? Far across the city I see a young man in a garret, leaning over a desk covered in papers. There is a tumbler by his side that is filled with withered violets. His hair is brown, his lips are red, and he has large, dreamy eyes. He is trying to finish a play for the director of the theater, but he is too cold to write any more. There is no fire in the grate. Hunger has made him faint." "I will wait with you one night longer," said the swallow, who really had a good heart. "Shall I take him another ruby?" "I have no more rubies now," said the prince. "My eyes are all I have left. They are made of rare sapphires. Take one to him so he can sell it to the jeweler and buy food and firewood and finish his play." The swallow flinches. "Your eye, dear prince? I cannot do that." And the swallow began to weep. "They were given to me once. I give them now." With great care, the swallow plucks the sapphire. He darts through a hole in the ceiling of a room where words have stalled and fingers are numb. He leaves the blue stone among the dead violets and flies outside to watch what transpires. He sees surprise bloom into heat on the man's face when he discovers the stone. The swallow flies back to the prince to tell him all that he saw. Then he curled at the feet of the prince and slept. The next day, the swallow flew back to the writer and perched outside his garret. He watched as the stove was fed and pages filled with words to be shared. And later, he sees joy and pride spread across the writer's face when he hears, for the first time, a thank you, barely spoken but meant. With warmth in his heart, the swallow flies back to the prince to tell him all that he has seen and to bid him goodbye before leaving for Egypt. "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," said the prince, "will you not stay with me one night longer?" "But it is winter," answered the swallow, "and the chill snow will soon be here. In Egypt the sun is warm on the green palms, and crocodiles lie in the mud and look lazily about them." "In the square below," said the happy prince, "there is a little match girl. She has let her matches fall into the gutter and they are all spoiled. Her father is cruel about money and she is crying. She has no shoes, no stockings, and her little head is bare. Give her the second sapphire." "You will be blind if I take the other," whispered the swallow as he looked down at the match girl. He has seen the way a child's shoulders curl when they expect to be struck, and he sighed. So he plucked out the prince's other eye and darted down with it. He swooped past the match girl and slipped the jewel into the palm of her hand. "How beautiful," she breathes, holding the blue to the sky as if it were the sky itself. "What a lovely bit of glass." She tucks it close and runs towards home to show her father. The swallow comes back to a blind prince. "You're blind now," he said. "So I will stay with you always. I will be your eyes," he says before the prince can ask him to go. Stories in Gold. All the next day he rides the towned winds, looking with two bright beads of sight the statue no longer possesses. At dusk he nestles into the warm shadow between the prince's feet and tells him what he has seen. "I saw the seamstress open her windows for the first time in weeks," he says. "She has sold the ruby. I saw her with a teacup and she laughed when the boy asked for bread instead of oranges because he liked the way the crust crackled. Oh, yes, and once I saw a riverboat with lanterns strung like stars. Did you know the Nile smells sweet in early evening? The ibis lines the shallows as if counting. I think they're counting blessings." "Tell me more," says the prince. "Well, I saw the playwright buy coal with a careful hand, and then, in a rush, eggs. He warmed his hands over the stove and read his own words aloud and believed them. They were glorious words. That reminds me, also, somewhere far from here, there's a temple where doves make a sound like pages turning. In the morning, lions come to drink, their reflection a crown they do not know they wear." The prince listens. Sight and wonder share the same ledge now. Both belong. "Is that all you have seen?" asked the prince. "No," sighed the swallow. "I flew over the great city and saw the rich making merry in their beautiful houses, while the beggars sat at the gates. I flew into dark lanes and saw white faces of starving children looking out listlessly at black streets. Under the archway of a bridge, there were two little boys lying in one another's arms, trying to keep themselves warm. They were hungry. "Take my gold," the prince says finally. "All of it, leaf by leaf. Give it away. Give it to the poor." And so he did. Leaf by leaf, the swallow peeled brightness from bronze. He let it fall like sunlight into hidden hands. A parcel left at a door, a sheen of coins that buys bread and thick socks, a sudden envelope that covers rent with just enough left over for apples. The statue turned gray, and then a kind of gentle dark, and the town, without quite knowing why, glowed. Each night the swallow returned to the prince and mixed reports like a braid. The girl with the blue stone sold all of her matches and went home without a bruise today. And once I had flown beside storms that stitched the sky from horizon to horizon. The thread was lightning. The cloth was rain. The seamstress mended her own sleeve today and did not hide the mending. The playwright gave half his gold to a neighbor and read a scene to an old man who then cried. Sometimes, when I rest on a ship's rope, I watch whales breathe like chimneys. It smells like iron and salt when they do. Thank you, little swallow, the prince says. I can see the world still through your words. And I have discovered a new town, a new world. I can see both healing and wonder. And so the swallow learns that goodness too has scenery. Snow. The cold comes honest and hard. Icicles draw knives along eaves. Boys skate in caps as bright as berries. People hurry, shoulders high. The swallow shivers, even in his hollow beneath the prince's feet. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too well. He picked up crumbs outside the baker's door when the baker was not looking and tried to keep himself warm by flapping his wings. Go, the prince urges. You have already given me the sky. I thought flight was going everywhere, the swallow whispers, but it is you who taught me how to arrive. Here I will stay, and when it is time, here I will die. He had just enough strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder one more time. "Goodbye, dear prince," he murmured. "Will you let me kiss your hand?" "You have stayed too long here," said the prince. "But you must kiss me on my lips, for I love you. Then you can sleep." "Yes, I am going to the house of death. Death is the brother of sleep, is he not?" And he kissed the happy prince on the lips and fell down dead at his feet. The sound the prince makes is small and vast at once, like a frozen river remembering it is water. A crack sounded inside the statue, as if something had broken. The fact is that the leaden heart had snapped right in two. "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, my friend." And the happy prince let the dark and cold enfold them both. The opinion of important people. Morning comes, truthful as paper. The mayor tips back his head and squints up. "How shabby," he announces in a voice that knows how to turn adjectives into policy. "How shabby," repeat the counselors, because echo is the safest kind of speech. "The ruby is gone, the eyes are missing, the gold's a memory," the mayor continues. "If it is no longer beautiful, it is no longer useful." A professor explains from the edges of the group that art is meant to inspire. He does not inquire whom it has fed. And so by decree, workmen pry the statue from the column, muscle it into a wagon, and carry it to a furnace where bright things are sent to become other bright things. But when the crucible burns like a second sun, one small fact refused to participate. The heart inside the statue would not melt. A man with a burned gloves tries a longer time, a higher heat, a different angle, but the heart remains. At the end of the day, they throw it into a pile of ash and scrap where the swallow lies, his body light as a fallen leaf, a head turned towards the shape of a pair of feet that is no longer there. The town stills. After. Out of the hush comes a voice, not thunder but warmth. "Bring me the most precious things in the town," said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird. "You have rightly chosen," said God, "for in my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing forever, and in my town of gold the happy prince shall praise me." The light folds around them both, not as a reward, but as recognition. The statue and the swallow rise together, and below, the town glimmers for one unguarded moment, as though learning how to see. Wrap up and reflection. In the end, The Happy Prince isn't really about a statue or a swallow. It's about how compassion outlasts beauty, how love keeps finding a way to give, even when there's nothing left to give from. The prince couldn't move, but he could still care. The swallow couldn't stay, but he chose to stay anyway. Together, they prove what matters most isn't what we have, it's what we share. I'll be honest with you. When I first read the original work as Wilde wrote it more than 140 years ago, it felt incomplete. In truth, it wasn't, but I wanted to make it something more for contemporary listeners. A retelling that draws out the emotional storytelling Wilde meant, but that our time needs to hear differently. Wilde wrote his tale more than a century ago, yet it still feels close. It reminds us that kindness doesn't need an audience, and that sometimes the quietest acts change everything. There's a poetry to his words I didn't want to lose. Wilde never wasted a word, and his repetition was deliberate. When the prince says, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," he isn't merely calling a messenger, he's learning tenderness. The triple name is a prayer, a lullaby, an admiration, all at once. It slows the rhythm and turns command into music. Each swallow is a heartbeat of love, a gaze lifted towards motion and grace he can no longer share. Early on, the phrase, "Do as I command you," carries the weight of habit. The voice is someone once obeyed. But as the story unfolds and the two grow closer, the command disappears. By the end, the prince no longer orders. He pleads, he thanks, and he calls the bird my friend. In that moment, both are freed, one from pride, the other from aimlessness. Wilde's closing scene keeps the voice of God because compassion itself is divine. The angel and God do not intervene to fix the town. They simply recognize what is already sacred, the heart that would not melt, the soul that would not fly away. That's why the story still matters. It isn't about reward, it's about recognition. Recognizing love, friendship, the quiet transformation that happens when someone finally sees you for who you are. And in that seeing, both are redeemed.